Last year we had 8
down
people.
Yeah, all right. Coming down here in my pajamas, but there's not going to be any questions from the audience, right?
All these seats in the middle are open, and neither water glass has been claimed, so you're welcome to have either of those if you would like. You could have worn jammies.
How's Nancy?
Nancy doesn't want to.
And Taylor, is he in town? Have you heard? Or?
He said that his dad had agreed to push off,
Had no
Right.
interest.
pick up the gear, so he was.
All right.
So do you guys spend the night in town, or do you go home in the dark?
That's great.
We have that place out there. Just, I mean, it's,
Sounds like my place.
yeah, it's, and so we use that anytime, and I go back out. And there's been times, there's been a number of times where we've actually gone, started out, turned around, came back because the water's so bad out there.
All right, what kind of feedback are you getting?
Not much. I just came back in town this Thursday.
Is that up for when it's 50 seconds left?
I haven't heard very much. Got a lot of questions on the website I had. But
I've been there once, I guess I should look it up. I'm also a supporter.
Joe, are these pretty sensitive?
What's that?
These pretty sensitive?
That's good distance to be right there. You probably don't want to be like that, too far off, so, yeah, I don't know. Unless you're doing that.
I agree with you. That's really,
Somebody hit my snooze button.
it took me a long time to learn that.
When you,
Yeah, so we got a big crowd out here tonight.
so you should be telling your,
Yeah, and it sounds like Debbie's recording it too, so it might even be on the Borough's website too.
and you be in there.
But he had
Is it getting
Or
more,
things in the pilot.
is it getting more so that it's clean publicity?
Yeah. All right.
Can we get you on the senior reporter, but we can manage?
Yeah. And new reporter in Wrangell too, and learning the ropes.
Next meeting, we
Good.
under discussion.
Have any family coming up to visit you or anything, or?
The family friends have said that find out till next summer year.
Okay.
Everybody know Ron's not back by then.
Well, summer's the time to visit, so, yeah. Definitely.
As much piss on our talk as anything, but that's why it's there.
That's okay.
I wouldn't have thought of it.
That's all right.
Well, when there was some people in the chat, good names that remember.
You called point of order. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't even think, I mean, I wouldn't have thought.
Yep, and everybody knows you too, so.
I'm not sure it is. I have to go back and look it up, but
Order on Don Kenning's once, and Al was mayor. That long ago, but it was the time. It was right, the right time for it. Now I can't even remember. I just remember Oh,
And then you go.
and he apparently is hoping. I was the three of us again. Because it might support Steve. You're still supportive of Steve, aren't you? And of the reorganization. Apparently once.
That's right. That's what you're saying.
Your neighbor out at Papke's.
he's not supportive. I think that's correct.
That was the coffee
Oh,
shop.
it's yeah, no, I
don't know. Everybody I see says good luck.
I've not heard anything until I saw that question, from the paper about Carl in that position.
Is there anything you want to say about election info?
Respond is.
Nope. Okay.
You can pretend I'm not here.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll turn your mic
just said yes, but then I sent him a note. He says, I don't think you're so
I'm gonna take notes, I need to be comfy, you guys come back here too. Just at nice after, they're not gonna share.
Oh, David, you're up in the,
Oh, there.
yep. You can choose.
You're on stage?
Empty seat. Oh, actually, I think Bob's sitting here, so.
Sit in the mayor's spot.
And this water, nobody has drank out of that water, and I don't know what's going on over there.
So,
So you're very right this time.
so anyway,
Overdressed.
Yeah, I don't know.
T-shirt.
God knows.
Dirty. She's outside. Peter.
No, I don't mind. They hear that, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh my
They did
God,
awesome.
that was really fun. Did awesome.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
I was kind of upset with the guy from, no, Sitka, that one that was
Oh, really?
Was that who it was? Because I think Dominic or Arnie were the ones that were kind of favored. But then the other guy was,
The Sitka guy?
I think so, and Dominic was second,
Well.
right? And then Arnie was third. And Joe Kate was fourth, I think. We're all friends.
Looks like a good time to be in the council, you know? We have comfy chairs, and it looks like they have snacks.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Trying to keep somebody moving, from going to sleep.
The snacks, you might need a taster for that. So the snacks, you might need someone to taste them. Good.
Yeah, it's a longer season, so yeah.
What did you guys,
Done for the year?
how long did you go with that?
We left the 19th.
It will be done.
We actually came back to the States on the 7th.
Yeah.
And then after that,
Oh,
Cindy
crabs.
had a wedding
No,
down
my,
Yeah.
Derek,
checking out the folks on San Diego.
he does
Yeah.
cucumber diving,
Back into town.
and the quota got expanded, so he's thinking maybe we'll get into the week.
It's a nice platform.
Yeah.
Interesting, it's,
Last year it was in for half a day a week. Really sucked. But paycheck was nice.
we kind of did.
I've had them before. They're tasty.
I did just
But I'm not saying that our usage.
Oh, no.
Well, yeah, no, especially for he crawled up a 9-foot squid over there.
When I was a fairly young kid, right in Hungry Point, I found this. I don't know how long it was. It was on the table, dead on the beach.
I don't want to put in the water or something like that. No thanks.
Think about it, you can't eat them.
No, they're full of ammonia.
Insane down. It's probably off Red Bluff Bay somewhere there. Just at night, you squid. They were big. Looked at it with the bird and they were giant.
There's what are those ones in the Gulf of California? They call them Diablo whales. I guess they've been up here very frequently.
Oh, yeah, there's always, I mean,
Lots of like migrants.
I used to troll right there at Big Creek. I get king salmon.
We're having Derek
Just right there.
We managed to,
here in October.
There's a squid bed there somewhere.
our shuttle bus was picking us up to go to large. This last couple got on.
I think the upstairs, some of the upstairs stuff, and then
We said, how many
parts
so
of
every time they were coming back,
yeah. So it's funny right now, I'm just like packing up blankets and doing stuff.
the
It's
way
like,
he said it,
I know,
she just
yeah,
looked
it's
it
a
over.
literal hole in it to the outside.
See the ring? So it was, we were there, official
They're probably,
and we kept in touch and changed emails and
no, they're already, it's pretty big.
that we had in the
But they're putting it on the radio.
to their destination.
But yeah, it's gonna be a tight fit because,
So
you know,
we,
trolls and.
so I was like, the only 2 times I've ever met them was when we took a picture of the proposal
Done like.
at their
Just say
wedding.
what you think.
Great concert band.
Oh, they sent it.
She met
High 30s.
14 years ago up in Germany. She was always dancing around back with me. So we were there, but we had a night
Again, with their radio interview,
said he had been through the last two times.
Oh, yeah, it's like,
I don't know.
the first time,
Threw us in the car, she was
97, we were doing this. And I was like, God, you look so calm. I can't stand it. You totally cut edge. I had to put it down here. I could keep this.
this person from Germany was checking out
I don't have audience question.
Because what happens is he's visiting friends in NBC.
I think he's Brian from the pilot.
Okay.
Joe is just somebody from the chambers, probably Kate, and then George is doing it handle Peters. He's just doing it back in '97 too. Back there with just and they had a TV camera too. They turned.
I remember don't worry, I came here when I was old chambers. And it was really
I was with she was watching on TV. And she said later, yeah, I did. I really didn't realize they were broadcasting. First meeting, I was sitting there, and she said, "Hey, we're going like this." And she was laughing. But she said that wasn't the funniest part. Later on, you went like this, ready, and I don't think, boss. See, it'd been hard to catch it, but we were watching because we saw
in Northern radio. I did the DNA swab. The DNA swab was
audience.
but it was the validation was fun because they were
Get close. Couple of
and as we started driving around and looking at things,
He's in green in the middle.
cities started picking
We got him all. We don't have Don because he's not interested anymore.
Yeah, that's the way he said it. It started. We did it. Signed up, but then I jumped in there and he nobody knew it. But he, okay, you got 4. I said, he wants to stay. His name still. He came real hard to tell people about it.
Yeah.
He would have won easily.
There's still more to see. And it's,
It's like Don's not even. He dropped out, but he dropped out after, I guess, the real session.
Yeah. He only got about 3 votes. But he came in, and by the time the election came around, he only got 30 votes.
these cathedrals that started like in 1200
That's what he did. He came in and out there.
centuries to build, and now they're, occasionally some bombs and reconstruction. Entire family was still
Time about timber was still doing every time timber was under the jump, we'd be here.
It was always amazing when you see towns and you see the bombers.
Well, no, the green. It's like endless. We realized then we'd already lost. They told me this was owned by the United States.
Well, and you look at some of those buildings in Europe, oh my gosh, going back 1600s. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We can slide this back and forth.
Choker job, right?
No, I can
He got along.
You kind of miss him trembling over there. Might be like making faces at me or something. So that's all. It's okay. I think
Okay, are we just about ready to go,
It's
everyone?
up to you.
Okay. We'll
You're the ringmaster.
clock here. Ready to get started and give a countdown to the radio station. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm out of here.
Hello and welcome. This is a candidate forum organized by the Petersburg Chamber of Commerce. Today is Monday, September 24th, 2018. And we're broadcasting from the Petersburg Borough Assembly Chambers. Welcome to everyone. We have today with us the 5 of the 6 candidates who are running for Borough Assembly tonight. We have Mark Martinson, Taylor Norheim, we have Bill Tremblay, and Bob Lynn, and Nancy Strand. And welcome to you all. My name is Joe Vicnicki, and I'm the news director at KFSK, and I'm going to be moderating this forum and asking some questions. I'm joined today as well by Petersburg Pilot's Brian Varela and the Chamber of Commerce's Kate Kowalski. And thank you for coming in tonight. They will also be asking questions. A note for voters before we get started, there is a 6th candidate on the ballot. It's Don Spiegelmeyer. He said he is no longer interested in the seat this year. It's past the deadline to withdraw from the ballot, so you will still see his name on the ballot when you go in and vote, but he's not with us tonight. So just a few rules before we get started. We have 2 hours allotted to this forum. And we'll try to take about a 5-minute break in between there for bathroom break in the middle. So, And the three of us are going to take turns asking you all questions, and we're going to give you 2 minutes to answer. And you can definitely use the full 2 minutes for your answers. You don't have to. It's up to you. But we'll give you a little signal when you get down to 15 seconds towards the end of your answer that you're running out of time, and then I'll cut you off at the end of the 2 minutes. So, with that said, I think we're also going to change the order of who gets to start first on every question and that kind of thing, so you don't have to go first every time. The first question is a very easy one. It's just who you are. Take this 2 minutes to introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, why you're running, your experience, and why you make a good candidate for Borough Assembly. I'll start on this end. Ladies first. Nancy Strand, you get that question first. 2 minutes. Go ahead.
And you want to know a little bit about me.
I do.
I'm retired, moved back home for my retirement. I've served on done elected service in the city, first with the utility board, and then on city council and the assembly for 8 years total. My interest in running is to support the continued smooth operation of the borough. I guess that's it.
Okay, good enough. The question goes next to Taylor Norheim. Please introduce yourself and say a little bit about your background.
I'm Taylor Norheim. I've lived here for all but 1 year of my life. I fish. I volunteer firefighter. I'm one of the Mayfest Vikings. I got 2 kids. Why I'm running was, well, I wasn't anticipating too many people running, but then there was a bunch, and now there's 5. But I don't know. I just like the idea of having lots of people running for positions, and so yeah, I decided I'd run, try and get my input on things.
Okay. Mark Martinson.
Well, good evening. I'm a 4th generation Petersburg resident. I've fished for 40 plus years in marine construction all over Southeast. I fished from Seattle up to Bristol Bay. Every fishery, seine, halibut, longline, blackcod, except for a brief couple of years in Oregon. I've lived here all my life. I'm kind of like Taylor. I put in my name because about 3 days before the deadline, there was one candidate, and then I turned around and there was 6.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I have 4 kids. The youngest twins are 22 now. I can't believe it, but they are. Oh, I spent 5 years on the city council way back when. It was a lot of fun. And, well, most people out there probably know who I am. Okay, go to the next victim.
Sounds good. Bob Lynn, your turn.
My name's Bob Lynn. My wife and I live out in Duncan Canal, and I guess I'm first generation Petersburg. I've served 4 years on the assembly before. I've also been the assembly's representative to the hospital board, the assembly's representative on the land selection committee, and I was one of 5 people that was selected the policy committee for the Alaska Municipal League, and I served on that for 3 years, looking at state issues and policy positions which support our borough and the other boroughs of Alaska. My reason for wanting to run is that I'd like to continue seeing if we can make a smooth transition into a borough that represents all people. Also, I think we need to look at an assembly that begins to work towards some common goals, and we have some things that we really face. Changing our hospital, we have a changing of the fisheries infrastructure that's taking place, and there's a lot of changes, and I'd like to be part to see if we could make that transition smooth and to represent all the interests. Thank you.
And Bill Tremblay.
Hello, I'm Bill Tremblay. Previously, I spent 9 years on the City Council back in 99 to 07. Prior to that, I also spent 2.5 years on the Craig City Council back in the 80s. I would currently, while I'm not on the council, I'm a borough resident and outside the Service Area 1, so when I was got off the council back then, I went on to other duties. I'm currently on KFSK board and their president at this point. Member of Search and Rescue, member of the Petersburg Community Foundation, and in regards to the volunteer fire department, I'm the current president of the association there. This has been my town for 27 years. I've lived here longer than I have any other place. I consider it home, and I like to contribute to the community as best I can. I think we've grown a bit. I was in favor of the growth of the borough, and then again, too, with the challenges of expanding services, that's something that may have to be addressed sooner than later as we have more construction out the way, and as we start to acquire more properties as well. So I'm looking forward to the next phase and helping Petersburg grow as a community.
Okay, thank you. We'll go in the opposite direction for this next question, and the question will come from Kate Kowalski of the Petersburg Chamber.
Good evening. Thank you guys for being here and participating in this forum this evening. The first question from the Chamber is, revenue sharing from the state has been declining. The tax base in Petersburg is declining as well. What will be your approach to balancing the borough expenditures and revenues for the general fund budget?
I'll give that question first to Bill.
It's not the first time we've had to deal with declining revenues. In fact, when I first got on the council back in 97, timber receipts that had been as high as almost $1 million in the past had been reduced to almost $120,000. There were significant reductions back then. And the approach back then was to, we did some additional consolidations of some of the city businesses. We also allowed for some reduction in staff through attrition. It was getting kind of squirrely because we were going to have some very serious questions about maybe reductions in services in the community, which was not something that we wanted to see. Then again, too, we'd go probably the same kind of approach. I was looking at the budget yesterday and I realized that the 2018-19 budget shows that there was some cost savings, or at least there's a minor reduction in all departments, keeping kind of consistent with what we're seeing with the reduction in federal and state funds. And I see that still as a good approach in trying to hold the line with the city departments to at least provide services. And I will say that while holding the services consistent in the community is one thing, I know that there's a lot of effort to get grants for helping to supplement programs, as well as to help with some of the new infrastructure, and I think the community's done very well in that kind of competition, so there's always that opportunity as it presents itself to still address some of our issues.
Thank you. Question to Bob Lynn.
Yeah, I would even add to the question that I think we've done really well as a borough and as a city of Petersburg obtaining money from the state to help with our infrastructure. I think our infrastructure is in good shape, but I think we still have a lot of maintenance to do. That said, I also think I've looked at the budget too and been involved with it. I think we're in fairly good shape right now, but I also don't believe we can continue to depend on the state for funds for infrastructure and that type of thing. So the question then becomes is where is this? What changes can you make, and what can you do? I don't advocate advocate increases in sales taxes, and I don't advocate increases in property taxes or anything else. The question is how do we get it? Well, I think we need to build some plans, long-term plans, and we need to work those plans. And by that I mean is that we take opportunities to either maintain what we have or to build whatever new is when those chances come available. But if we haven't thought out, if we haven't got agreement, if we haven't agreed with the various boards, etc., and have those in hand, I don't think we're going anyplace. So from my perspective, we need to continue to keep a lean, mean, responsive local government, and I think we have that. I just think we need to keep it, and I think we need to continue to look at all the means possible to keep costs down, and at the same time to keep businesses pushing as much of our local government to private enterprise as we possibly can. Thank you.
Mark?
Well, we're going to have to cut back. There's no other choice. I mean, we had some great years fishing on, not so great last couple of years, but we had a decade of it. It was just phenomenal. It was a perfect storm of lots of fish and incredible prices. And it'll never happen again. It was once in a lifetime thing. And we got a budget now of, $16.5 million and 9.5 of the general fund. That seems like an awful lot of money. We're going to have to find ways to cut back. I just don't see any other way. I remember back in the 90s when I was a council, the logging was still going on. There was a small outfit logger here. He had $1 million payroll. That's all gone now. And fishing is iffy at best, and we've seen that. And I've been 40 years in it. I've seen a lot of ups and downs. And what happened 10 years ago with the fishing, I told my son, who was making $70,000 crewing on a seine boat, it's never going to happen again. Save your money. Sailing was never like that. I mean, we've got to find ways to cut. They just can't keep going this way. Thanks.
And Taylor?
It's about the same. You definitely don't want to raise any taxes anywhere. I don't anyways. And, maybe people need to take a reduction in pay, or you don't want to cost anybody their jobs because that's not cool, but, just lower pay if it comes to that.
Okay. And Nancy?
We all know it's easy to legislate when there's lots of money, and it's getting less and less. We have to toe the line in spending in order to maintain what we have. It's going to be an interesting enterprise. So, I agree we don't want to be raising any taxes. We just hope that the state continues to be generous, that we can, or as generous as possible. We hope to find grants and other sources of funding and support balancing the budget, continuing to balance the budget. Beyond that, it's going to be an effort. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to pass the mic over to Brian, and first person to handle this question, let's start with Bob Lynn on this one. Brian?
Hello everyone, thank you all for coming. My name is Brian Varela. I'm here representing the Petersburg Pilot. And my question for you today is going to be, are you in favor of repealing the senior tax exemption? Why or why not?
I didn't hear you, Brian. Repeat that, please.
Yeah, are you in favor of repealing the senior tax exemption? Why or why not?
I'm not in favor of doing away with the senior tax exemption for a number of reasons. Is that, Petersburg has a very strong social infrastructure. And whether it be, the personal families or whether it be the churches or so forth, I've been around, 25 years or so, and I've watched folks take care of folks in Petersburg, and I've watched the folks volunteer, and whether they volunteer for KFSK or at the hospital or someplace else. And I've also watched people generously give to various causes, etc. So is it wrong to give a reward for seniors that are 65 or over who are doing this? And yeah, I would agree there are some, things that are probably bought that shouldn't be, and there's some abuses. But I don't support totally doing away with it. I would support some change, but not the change as is. And I also do not believe that we should be putting the burden of proof back on the individuals who least can afford to pay for what they're doing. We have people. I've done volunteer work for people both here in town and people out who simply are living on less than $10,000 a year. Should we be taking and say, oh no, we're not doing it? But now we're putting the burden on them. Some of them don't even have a way to get to town to fix it. And so I'm not in agreement with making the change as currently is. Thank you.
Let's go to Bill next with that one.
As proposed in the ballot, I'm in favor of changing the senior tax exemption and making it more of a needs-based type of allowance. Next year I'll be eligible for it. I've been retired for 2 years. I also live in the borough, but I'm only paying for 4 mills out the road because that's the way it's set up, because I don't have much services besides that. And, I guess I can choose not to take that exemption when it's my turn, but then again, too, I'm also watching around us out the road, lots of new houses going up and more retirees moving in, and it's kind of this is a nice community to move to. I listened to Ted the other day talking about the reason why it was put in place, to kind of like give seniors a break and reward people who've been here for a long time. Well, a lot of us haven't been here for a long time. And I have no problem with those who can pay being able to help with the receipts to this community, help keep the services up. We don't pay for fire, although we serve things out there. We don't pay for search and rescue, although we serve out there. Other services like that, it seems to make sense that the tax exemption, we all in our federal taxes get an allowance for the sales tax we pay as it is. So it's kind of like you're already getting some type of an allowance regarding it as well for those who can afford it. So I'm supportive of what's put on the ballot, but then again, too, we've had other questions like this on the ballot in the past, and however the chips fall, that's how they're going to go.
Thanks. Let's go down to the other end here, Nancy.
I'm in favor of a needs-based exemption. I'm not so sure I would support the rebate. I think somebody who's trying to live on $15,000 a year needs that 6% every time they shop. Again, it's an ongoing effort.
Okay. Let's go next to Mark.
Okay. Senior sales tax exemption. Absolutely not. I won't support it at all. Numbers. There have been a lot of numbers being tossed around about the senior citizen sales tax exemption. Numbers that would make you believe that if we don't end it, services are going to be slashed. This proposition, I believe, is poorly written, a slap in the face to our senior citizens, and will not do much to bring revenues to the city. Let's look at some of these numbers, but as they say, a liar can figure and figures can lie. The revenue from lost sales tax is $385,000, which the city admits is not an accurate number due to the sales tax cap. But take that $385,000 divided by the 570 tax cards. That is $675 per cardholder per year. This year, 570 tax-exempt cards were probably issued. The 2000 census states that there were 347 people in Petersburg that were over 65. The state's numbers today put seniors over 65 at 576. So if you've got 570 cards, did we double in 8 years? I don't know. The state's figure, if we take the state's figure as gospel, that would mean practically every senior has applied for a tax-exempt card. I could name at least 10 I know that do not bother with it. So these numbers are kind of suspect to me. if the 570 cards were issued, perhaps we need to tighten up on the requirements. Last year, the city's estimate was about $700 a year loss in sales tax. So a $300 rebate isn't a whole lot of money compared to what they are getting. The city's current budget is $16.5 million, 5% less than the previous year. And we have a general fund of about $9.5 million.
About 5 seconds left.
I think this proposition as a whole is an insult to our citizens, seniors, and would be, as today, someone born after 1953.
Thank you. We can get into that more if you want in further questions. So we'll put it to Taylor finally here.
So I like taxes to be voluntary, and this is like the only voluntary tax that we have around. If the seniors recognize that, hey, city needs some more money, well, they can opt into paying that sales tax if they want to currently. So if they're from out of town and they haven't been there their whole lives and they feel that, hey, we should help out the community, then they can just not say, hey, I'm tax exempt, and pay those taxes. Or if they can't, because maybe they haven't been here very long and they just need a couple extra bucks to get to the next one, because there are people out there like that who just can't afford that, then they go for the tax exempt because maybe they can get that jar of honey or something to put on the toaster, you know? So I think it should stay the way it is.
Okay, thanks. I'll take the next question here, and let's start this round of questioning with Mark Martinson. I wanted to ask about the reorganization of borough departments that happened this past year, essentially putting a utility director in charge of the power and light department and a couple other departments that were in the past in public works. Do you support or oppose what happened with that reorganization, and why?
Well, I didn't agree with it at all. It was Carl's new department, Carl Hageman. But I think now that's done, I think Carl should stick with it. I mean, I've known him a long time, and let's give him a chance. And I think if anybody can do it, then he's got a good chance to do it. He's been around the city for a long time. But again, I didn't agree with it. Thanks.
Okay. Let's go next to Bob on that one.
The Assembly made that decision, and I think it's a decision we need to really stay with and work it through. And I can tell you from being Petersburg representative to Southeast Alaska Power Authority, we have big investments in that equipment that's out there, whether it be power poles or transformers or so forth. At the same time, the Borough Assembly raised rates about 4 years ago or so to build a pool so that we can do replacement of those poles and to help that infrastructure. And I think Carl's a very good person to have on board to help build those plans that we're going to need to do the replacement and to keep the efficiency in that electrical infrastructure.
Okay. Let's go to Taylor next on that.
I remember when they were talking about it, and it seemed like a kind of a weird jump in positions, and I had talked to several electricians, and they had said, no, why would you do that? It's a bad idea, and they had sound arguments for it. So at the time, yeah, I guess I was kind of against it, but now that he's there, I would ask, has he ruined anything? Has anything gone downhill because of his position there? And if not, then why would you remove him? I mean, if he really wants the job, and I'm sure he does, then he'll learn what he needs to do to fill in the gaps that, he didn't qualify for before. So, yeah, he's there now. Let's see what he can do.
Okay. Bill, your question?
As was stated, this was a recommendation from the city manager to combine these departments based on what we've had for previous electric department heads. based on cost savings, which is coming at a good time as we talk about reductions of federal and state funds. It was something that was accepted by the Borough Assembly, and it's been done. I think it's just time to move it forward.
Okay, Nancy.
I've always been supportive of it. It's working well. I think it probably would have worked fine if it had been anybody. I think it's a good idea as a cost-saving device and as a efficiency experiment. And I think it should continue.
Okay, thanks. Let's start this next question with Taylor, and the question comes from Kate Kowalski.
Okay, the Chamber's second question is, are there any borough services that you would suggest being privatized or cut?
I mean, ideally, all of them, but that's not practical in a small town cut off from, everything else. So, off the top of my head, I can't say that I think of any right now.
Okay, let's go to Nancy next with that.
I can't think of anything that we can cut without cutting service. If, say, we cut one employee from the aquatic center, an employee from the library, maybe 2 police officers, it would be a saving of approximately $250,000, which with many $250,000 cuts we might notice. But I think we have to be really careful when we go to cut, because people want to continue having snow removal and garbage pickup, and I think many people like the recycling program. Just think it's going to be tough.
Okay, thanks. Let's go next to Bill.
I can't think of a service that we'd like to privatize. I think the primary reason is I think Petersburg is a nice small community, 3,000 people, and it would be difficult, I think, to capitalize on that number of people to provide a service. I also think that as things move quickly, even with the way we handled garbage and recycling and other things, that I think our borough has a good mix to be able to be flexible. I don't think we'd get that with contracted services. It'd be very tough to change a contract as things change, like what happened with the recycling, with also the bottom fill out with the market, and then how would we respond with the contract to provide services that way. So I like how we provide services now because of the flexibility.
Thank you. Mark?
Well, I think a recycling program could go away. We had a nice little program going with private citizens doing it. We could provide bins. If you want to recycle, go throw it in there and recycle away. But most departments are going to have to take some cuts. Everyone. Thanks.
Okay, and Bob, finally.
So some of the services that are provided, we simply don't have any backup. If you talk about our water and our sewer systems and the operation of those, you can't take any more people out of there. We've taken, there's no backup. There just isn't. You can't pull it. Either do it or don't. I mean, that's kind of the stage you're at. In some other areas, like for instance the police, and maybe the recycling, and we may have some opportunity to make some change. How much change, that depends on what the public's willing to accept, and whether or not they're willing to pay higher fees. Some of the things we're talking about are paid by service, and so that whether it be the electrical or whether it be the sewer and water, those aren't in the general fund. If we're talking about the general fund in itself, you could probably make a little bit of adjustment in it, but there isn't much backup to be had that I know of. Could some of it be done by private enterprise? Yeah, I think it probably could, but it would require some major change and some adjustment. But that should be done, I think, on a trial basis, not just willy-nilly make changes. Thank you.
Thanks. This next question will come from Brian, and let's start it off with Bill this time around.
All right, to continue off of my remarks that Bob touched upon, do you want to end the borough's recycling program, change it, or keep it going as it is? Even if it means a loss compared to just shipping that material to the landfill, and why not?
Question on the recycling program. Do you want to end it, change it, why or why not?
Well, it's going to have to change. The presentation at a couple assemblies ago noted that we are going to lose money on it because of the change in the market. The market fell through with China no longer taking things over there. It'll be interesting to see how it changes. I know that Community Foundation provided was it the marine education folks some additional money. They have a whole series of things that they're presenting for learning about recycling and how to cut waste and all that kind of stuff. And I think that we might be able to entertain a little bit more education about how we maybe consume less and how we prevent, all these magazines and other things that come into town and catalogs. How can we, turn the page, so to speak, on those things, not receive as many of those, so we're not throwing it in the baler to be shipped down south at those additional costs. I think there are some creative alternatives we can look forward to there, but I think we still have to address it.
Okay. And Mark already touched on this, but a question to you about the recycling program. Change it, end it, keep it as is, and why?
I think it should go away. I never agreed with it. And you have a nice little recycling program that private citizens were operating, and now you've got this trucks, employees, and cans, and it's staggering, probably cost compared to what it was. Like I say, we could do like we did before. Here, bins, paper, plastic, bottles. Take them there. If you don't so concerned, recycle away.
Okay. Bob?
I think recycling is, we need to continue to do it. But I also agree it has to change because when you look at the world markets and what's happening, we won't accept glass. There's been a bunch of changes on the use of plastics and how that interacts with the environment. I do think there needs to be some changes, but exactly what those are, we could go back and do the recycling like we used to. And yes, we could do that, and that might save some money, but I'm not educated enough right now to be able to say, yes, we ought to do this, or yes, we ought to do that. I do think we're going to have to look at changes.
Okay, thanks. Let's go to Nancy next.
I agree there needs to be changes, but I like the idea of recycling. It would be nice if we had a big store that sold everything in bulk and you brought your own container and refilled it. It'd be nice if there was a dairy. One of my first jobs was delivering milk and washing bottles. Plastic is a giant hazard and pain in the butt. We need to work on that. Here we go, more plastic. I use mine more than once. So, I don't know. Changes. Cardboard is still apparently fairly lucrative. At least pays for itself. If I could get my peanut butter in cardboard, I'd go for it. So.
Okay. And Taylor?
Probably like Mark on this one. If the recycling program is costing more money than it's bringing in, then it should probably go away and go back to where it was. Most people nowadays, I think, would recycle. I know I would. I do. And then, if it's costing money, get rid of it, privatize it again. It sounds like they were doing all right when it was privatized, so.
Okay. I'll take the next question. We'll start this with Nancy. She's already touched on the next topic that flows right out of this, I think, is the possibility of a plastic bag ban or other kind of solution for reducing single-use plastic bags in the community, whether it's a tax on each bag that you use. Do you support any of these measures to lower the number of plastic bags that are used in the community, or do you like the voluntary system now, or do you have other thoughts about this? We'll start that way.
I use cloth. I use reusable bags for shopping. If I didn't have a few of those single-use plastic bags, which I have never known to be single-use, I would have to buy a different plastic bag to put my garbage in because I can't recycle everything. I don't have a compost heap because I don't want to attract bears in the summer. I don't try not to buy anything in cans. That's not a problem for me. The fine strand crystal consists of 16-ounce peanut butter jars. There's only so much a person can do. And every one of those, every time you use a reusable shopping bag, it saves on those single-use bags. So that may be the best way to get rid of them.
Okay, let's go to Mark next on that.
Well, you can pry my plastic bags and my guns from my cold, dead hands. They're a number 2 recycling product, and they're made with 25 to 30% of recycled plastic. I can't imagine if you're going to the boat carrying 6 or 8 recyclable or reusable bags down the boat, or a family of 4 putting 10 bags in the car. I mean, if you're using a cotton-based product for your reusable, cotton is about 2% of the world's agricultural mix, and we use 23% of the world's pesticides. So there you got a problem there. So take your choice.
Okay, let's go to Taylor next.
I don't know that I really like the idea of banning things in town, but I do recognize that plastic bags can cause a problem. I don't know that I've seen a problem around here, maybe 1 or 2 floating in the harbor that I pull out of the water every once in a while when I see it. But I don't know, if we had a lot of those reusable bags, I think I've got 6 or 7 at the house now. If those were all just floating around town and you had some kind of receptacle, you just throw them in there when you're done using them and then just rework them through the town, that might work. But I can't say that I've noticed a lot of plastic bags floating around as a problem.
Okay, thanks. And Bob?
I was just in Fairbanks and Anchorage, and as you probably know, both of those towns now have decided to ban at some future date the plastic bags, or if you want them, there's going to be a tax associated with them. I think Fairbanks shows up in 2019, but they've been giving word out here. And I was sitting there thinking as I was in one of the stores coming out, could I carry those bags out? How could I carry the stuff I bought out? You know, if I didn't have a plastic bag, would I be willing to pay for a plastic bag to carry my stuff out? Yeah, if it wasn't too expensive. But and I think we need to watch and see how, before we jump in the middle of that one, I'd like to be able to watch and see how a couple of the other larger communities are dealing with that and what kind of problems they run into before we run willy-nilly to one way or another on that issue.
And Bill?
I've also been to some communities where they've put those bans in place, and it pretty much comes down to having your own bags available, cotton or plastic or however it comes to it, that you reuse. The life in those reusable bags is years at a time versus those bags that be pretty much disposable. I think in general, the reduction of those would be good, and I think it just has to deal a lot with a person's responsibility and working towards that end and changing habits more than anything. I'm not sure we're ready for a strict ban on those things, but then again, too, I've also seen a lot more people using their own bags at the grocery stores as well.
Okay, thanks. The next question will start with Mark, and it comes from Kate Kowalski.
How can the Assembly support economic development in Petersburg?
Reduce taxes, give some breaks to new businesses that move into town, power, land. I know we've messed that up before. Get the word out, hey, come to Petersburg. We got all the land we need. We got cheap power, lots of water, manufacturing of some kind. I mean, there's going to be, sky's the limit. We just have to open up the muskeg and put a road in. You get some pretty cheap power. It used to be, Seattle used to be pretty cheap. Now we're about a third of what they were. And I notice a lot of people are switching over to electric from oil, and that's quite a change. And so we've got a lot of opportunities. We've got water, land, and good electricity. So the word needs to get out.
Okay, Taylor, you're up.
Well, with that one, I would say the same thing. Tax breaks to new businesses, and there's plenty of land and cheap power. But I also don't want to see the town get any bigger. You know, it's like, what kind of economic development? Oh, you know, Amazon headquarters. No. I don't want that. If I wanted to live in a bigger town, I'd move to a bigger town. I like the size it is now. So if we're talking about maybe small business here and there, cool, yeah, give some tax breaks. Maybe try and get some more boats in the harbor. Something like that.
And Nancy?
Tax breaks is a good idea if they work. As far as more boats in the harbor, we get 3 harbors full of boats right now. Where's the 4th one?
Oh, maybe you need to build one.
I thought we were putting the reins on infrastructure. So it's once again, it's going to be tough. I can see a tax break now and then. The PEDC is working on economic ideas about economic development, which people can come and testify at or discuss ideas. We need ideas, so.
Okay. Bill?
There's, I guess to support some economic development, we have to maybe speak up a little bit more with our transportation needs. The ferry system has been just atrocious these last few years. I used to tell people there's plan A, plan B, and relax. You know, plan A being the jet, plan B being the ferry, but we can't depend on that anymore. I mean, especially with families even coming up. They used to be able to book in January to come up in the summertime. Now the legislature won't even release their budgets until close to summertime. In fact, usually in May and June, the ferry system is scrambling to rearrange people trying to come up here and put them on different ferries because they can't commit to what's going on with the transportation system. I think that's a huge thing for us. The other thing is that it's nice to bring, I think, with the water that we now have, with the extra dam we put in, the electricity is great, the GCI cable and the fast-moving internet, that's great. But as we try to invite people to live here, they have to have affordable housing too. You know, years ago, the city partnered with Clank and Haida to develop the land up in near the Hammer and Weacon. And something like that might be something we might try to do again with another partner, where we share some of our land with the developer, to give them a foothold and to give them an advantage, and also to open up less expensive land for people to build their housing on. I think it's time for more ideas with affordable housing, because some people just can't afford to be here.
Thanks. And Bob?
That's a really good question. I've done a lot of thinking about it. In order to have, I think, to bring new businesses and or to keep the ones we have viable, I think we need to have a couple of things. First of all, is the transportation costs, as somebody else said, are really, really high, and they seem to be going up. What can we do to reduce those? I think that has to be an emphasis, to see what we can do, because you can't attract new businesses if they can't get their raw materials in and their product back out. One. Two, if we talked about internet, well, the internet, I'll have to tell you, is not up to down south standards, and so I think there has to be some changes in that. Along with that, I think we need to do some work on our own infrastructure. I don't think our infrastructure really supports what we need to do, what we need, or what some of the businesses really need. And along with that is that I think we need available loans, short-term loans for people at low interest rates who want to start a new business. And yes, some of them are going to fail and some won't. Some will go real high. But if you look at interest rates and you look at the ability of a business, a startup business, they need to have available funds and not pay, anywhere from 10 to 20% interest rates on them. And along with that, they need guaranteed for a while supply of raw materials to whatever they're doing or for whatever businesses. I think we also need to do that we need a good hospital, we need good community services to attract them here. Thanks.
Thank you. And Bob, you'll start with this next question, and the question comes from Brian Varela.
Okay. What is the role of an assembly member, and how does it differ from the borough manager position?
That's a good question. The borough manager, go back to our charter of Petersburg, the borough manager is the one that runs the day-to-day operation of the borough. It's totally in charge. The Assembly's direction in the charter is simply to provide the overarching regulation and the emphasis of what needs to be done and where the borough needs to be going. The day-to-day operations is left for the city manager.
Okay, let's go to Mark next on that one.
Well, the city manager works for the Borough Assembly. And sometimes what I've seen, it gets into a wag the dog kind of thing. And it just kind of won't speak up and just go with his ideas. You might in your heart saying that's really stupid, because he's maybe been here 2 or 3 years and he's from Iowa or wherever, Kenai, and if you've been around town 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you probably know what's going on. My first year on the council, we wanted to build a new post office, and they were going to put it where the library is now. They wanted to get it away from downtown for more parking. And I listened to this for a few meetings. It was practically a done deal. The city manager had laid it all out. It was, this is the way it's going to be. It was practically sold, and I listened to it, and I finally said, raised my hand, yes. Anyone else but me think this is a really stupid place to put a post office? Imagine the traffic on that corner up and down Hagen. The thing rolled from there, and some of the other councilors kind of agreed with it. The city manager eventually we eventually told him, no, we can't do this. It's a really dumb idea, so we don't want to wag the dog kind of thing, but he gets direction and goes with it. We don't want to micromanage it, just get it done.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, as people point out, the city manager pretty much runs the operations, overheads the oversees the staff that's in charge of their departments. And they work. He works at the direction of the assembly, and one of the primary ways that the city manager and the assembly work together is through the budget. As the budgets are prepared and the direction comes up from the city manager with where things are heading and where they might be going, it's still the city assembly that approves the budget and the final direction on what's going to happen for that next fiscal year. So. Then again, too, there's the occasion to ask questions and clarification to the city manager, but generally that should be coming from the assembly, not just individuals. Sometimes individual questions come up, and it's okay to ask things, but then again, too, the city manager runs his shop. He should be able to respond when he can, as his priorities dictate during the week as well. So. We work together as a team, I hope.
Okay. Let's go to Taylor next.
I guess I don't really understand what the question was trying to get out of
Do you understand the different roles? What's the role of the assembly member and what's the role of the manager? What's the difference?
Yeah, I guess.
Am I getting that right, Brian?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Then, yeah, pretty much what they all said. I got the packet, I read it. He's the CEO and we're the board, basically.
Okay. Nancy?
Yeah, what they said.
Yeah.
It's the city manager runs things, and we approve or disapprove.
Okay. I'd like to quickly follow up. We're almost near taking a break, but while we're on that topic, the current borough assembly, are there any votes in the past year that you would vote to revisit that you don't like, that it would be a top priority for you to go back and try to undo? Let's start that with Bill.
I'd say no. The assembly has done a pretty good job of talking things out and coming to a final vote on things, and that's how it's supposed to go. I mean, retracing steps, how far back do we go, right? I think it's moving ahead is what this assembly should be about. What's the next question to resolve?
Okay. Go down to the other end to the incumbent on the assembly. Are there any votes of yours that you would, or others that you would undo?
I hadn't given this any thought.
Okay.
I may be able to come up with something at some point. Right off the top of my head, no, I can't think of anything.
Okay. Taylor?
I've been out fishing a lot, and I haven't heard any Bureau Assembly meetings, so no, I can't say that I can think of any.
Okay, and Bob?
No, not that I would revisit. I thank him for putting the senior citizens exemption onto the ballot rather than to make a decision themselves.
Okay, and Mark?
Well, recycling, municipal building, it's a nice building, but I wouldn't have voted for it. I know there's a bunch more. Give me a day, Joe. I'll give you some.
Okay, that's fine. Well, we got time for one more question before we break. I'm going to pass it over to Kate Kowalski for the next question.
Okay. Would you support efforts to increase sales or property tax rates?
Let's start with Taylor on that one.
No.
Maybe if you could just say why or why not. If you could throw it in there.
I just don't like the idea of increasing taxes on anybody. It's if you need more money, ask for more money and go get some donations or something. But don't tell people they have to pay this money or you're out.
Bob?
I'm not in favor of increasing either. Definitely not the sales tax, because I think that's a regressive tax. It hits the people who can at least afford it the hardest. So at this point, no. I'd be looking at for other forms if we needed, other revenues. And I've in the past, we've put them on the ballot and they failed. But maybe some of those need to be revisited.
Okay. Mark, you're up.
No, I would, without raise any, I would strongly try to lower taxes. The funny thing about lowering taxes is that you put more money back into the pockets of the people who produce. And sometimes you actually raise more money going into the city coffers. There's not been a society in the world, I think, that has taxed themselves into prosperity. I think, unless it's changed in the last 20 years, if we get into a bonding, the city can automatically just raise your property tax to cover that bond at any time, any year. And that's a scary thought. I think it's up to 20 or 30 mills. It's quite a bit of money. That I think they're going to raise it a little bit this coming year, the property tax bills. So, thanks.
Thanks. Nancy?
No, I don't. I think we should avoid raising the taxes as long as we possibly can. I think the state's going to do that for us before we are forced to do it. The state's talking about a state sales tax, which is going to be difficult for small communities throughout the state. So they make grants for.
Okay. And Bill?
I don't foresee any taxes being raised for the foreseeable future. You know, like I'd mentioned before, all the building out the road and Borough property, there may be some point where residents out there realize that they may want to see some more police services or fire services and that kind of stuff, and we'd go through the motion to have the discussion out there in the vote and identify what we'd want to raise our mill rates to cover that. But beyond that, I don't see anything in the foreseeable future. I mean, I know that the harbor is doing something soon, but then again, too, it's been discussed. The reasons are there. We do operations and maintenance now. It's a reasonable raise, but nothing beyond that.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to take about a 5-minute bathroom break. Thank you for all your answers. We've got lots more topics we're going to get into in the second hour, so we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Let's go home now. Yeah, no, we used to start at 7.
Start at 7:30, wouldn't be here till like 9:30.
Usually, 9:30 would be normal. But I thought that was late. 7 was, 6:30 before.
Yeah.
But noon, I don't know. Really nice. We couldn't before. We couldn't call in and actually vote.
You what?
Before. Mm-hmm. You couldn't call in and actually register a vote.
Oh.
I think you could call in and listen. You
can't vote?
When you call in now, they've changed it.
Oh, they did.
There's still limitations on it, but before, I think you could call in and listen, but you really couldn't put any input or even have a vote.
I need to get a piece of paper because I'm going to write these questions down so I can, when I'm not called on first, like
but they got lots.
Cato, I'm the only one without paper.
Yeah, my phone called me. I mean, that one is pretty crazy. I would have to do that too. Oh, here I have paper. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know that basically they'll like fund the joke. People got paid super well for that. They had like a whole giant crew that would go get fed and be out there and
It's true economic development.
Natasha came back and said, you know, it's all 20 months. So we got 4 cars in here.
Just small but mighty.
Oh, yes, yeah, I'm sure everybody in there was get out of here.
Do you need more water?
No. I'm fine.
What's happening in
Life saving. Take some medication. I got it's like riding my old
Well, because there was some medication, was it Sammy, there's something on it too, it's a blood pressure medication that does, like, it's like a thing that is just no side effect. So it's like, well, you want to stay alive or you want to have a conversation?
I got thousands.
Twice a month.
Don't look at the question first.
I was sitting with, no, we subsidized it.
I've changed my mind about something.
I think it's great, it's like you got to the point, you know the answers, just give them.
I just think it's a
Sure, yes. So, try to do that more too.
No, you're doing great.
What's Laddie up to?
Oh, we're dating halibut here and we're leaving tomorrow. We were leaving today, but it's like, I should probably go to this thing.
Yeah, that's a good experience.
So I had to wait a day. It's only 2,000 pounds. Catch it tomorrow.
You want suck
Tomorrow
out?
evening. We actually tried that once. We got like 200 pounds. I don't think it's we know where to settle.
Yeah, you want to keep straight, you know, get that hump out there. Or, oh jeez, off Portage Island out there. Hit them pretty good. There's not big sometimes. I know past Big Creek. Caught my biggest halibut there.
Yeah, well, I think it's about or something. It's still summertime. They're up shallow.
Yeah, I know. I've seen guys that set about 15 skates right along the kelp inside Brothers. 10 fathoms.
Yeah. Oh, right in it? Between it?
I set between it. Did pretty good. I've set.
Really?
It was with the Tammy K, but I set all in between all of the islands. I got big fish. There was this. No, this got right down the middle. Done that.
Okay, candidates, if you don't mind, if we can
All in
get started
between
again
5
soon,
fingers.
pretty soon.
There's a set. You go right to the right, throw your bag, go almost hits.
And for Liam
There's a little
Joseph
trench
up at the radio station, I'll give you another countdown when we get started again here.
Yeah, I mean,
Another
frankly, hit
minute or so.
bag on the rock right beneath the light and head
Just
right first.
slower, and you can project a little more.
Steamboat bag. There's a little trench there.
No, this is going out over the KFSK
I
airwaves.
had,
Yeah.
first year I had circle hooks.
We are not broadcasting at the moment, so.
20 pounds. But it's not always a better set. I mean, you go right to the island, throw the bag. 60 fathoms. It's a trench.
I have a video voice practice my projecting.
It's a trench. It's not much.
Yeah,
You were
right.
free on the deck. Did you run
And
over?
Brian, you'll be up with the first question when we get started. Okay, good.
5 skates.
East Coast Bridge. Down north, and then we were in Scotland for. Yeah.
All right, candidates, are we ready to go? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, welcome back to the Candidate Forum organized by the Petersburg Chamber of Commerce. So 5 candidates for the Petersburg Borough Assembly, and we're going to dive right back into questions. The first question will be started by, let's start with Mark Martinson on this one, and it comes from Petersburg Pilots, Brian Borough.
All right. Well, it looks like Petersburg is going to be on TV these coming months. Reality show is going to be based here in Petersburg. And I'm just wondering, if you ever on as a Borough Assembly, would you support the continuation of a TV show here in Petersburg?
Well, the way I understood it, it was going to be they were going to focus on police officers all throughout state, just on officers that had come from out of state, and see how they liked it, how they were faring. They weren't going to spend a lot of time here. I'm on the fence, but I say go with it. They had the option to edit out anything that they didn't like. So the way I understood it, it was statewide, and it was just briefly, and different focuses, maybe different years, but it seemed kind of interesting.
Okay, we'll go to Bill next.
I think Alaska was up to almost 16 different TV shows that's available at this point. When I was just spent like 3 weeks in France, and most of the discussion was ice road truckers from Alaska. I could have done without this TV show, as I've dealt with some TV shows in the past with my former job with the Special Use Permit Administration with the Forest Service, and what went on with some of those shows wasn't actually what was happening or depicted as it should have been out there, and there was some selective editing and some things going on that probably shouldn't have. I'm sure that with the police department, they'll probably be a little bit more selective in what they do. They'll probably be a little more straight with what they do, and I'm sure they're going to probably portray them in a good light. So we'll just see how it goes.
Okay, let's go to Nancy.
I don't have TV, but I'm kind of interested in hearing about this. I understand that in addition to following police officers around on their job, there's going to be quite a bit of time spent on quality of life scenes. There are at least two other cities will be participating, and our police chief will have final approval. If there's something that he doesn't think is appropriate or correct, he can have it edited out. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes across. Hopefully there won't be anybody like the Browns involved in it.
Okay, and Bob?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of neutral on this, and I'm glad the fact that we have an opportunity to edit it, and I hope it depicts what we really are, not what some of the reality shows show. I think that if it helps us with our businesses and stuff in town, it's probably a good deal if everything works out okay.
Okay, and Taylor?
Yeah, I don't see a reason to not have one if they want to come do it. Sure. I mean, if they're following the cops around and they're okay with it, police chief's going to have a final edit on it. I imagine kind of like the State Troopers show did. I really liked watching that one. I was bummed when he didn't want to do it anymore, but as I understand, it was taking up way too much time of the head trooper. I don't know what he's actually called, but he just didn't want to deal with it anymore. So I don't know, maybe our chief will have more time to do stuff like that, and we can have a fun little show and just watch everybody around town.
Okay, thanks. I'll take the next question, and I'll start it with Nancy. I want to ask about the hospital. It's a borough-owned building. Current hospital staff have talked that they cannot make do indefinitely with the current hospital building without doing renovations or a new hospital building. What is your solution or way forward as a borough assembly to figure out what to do to give people who work in a hospital a good place to work and the patients a good place to be?
First of all, we definitely can't afford a $40 million new building. We probably can't afford to have the renovations done all at once. They're going to be they've already remodeled the kitchen. They've done some electrical work up there. there's more things that need to be done. It would be nice if they could deliver babies up there once again. And I hope somebody's looking for grants, but otherwise it's going to have to be a little at a time as we can find the funding.
Okay, Taylor?
So my understanding is this hospital is going to be very expensive and that we can't afford it. So then we can't build it. If it's, I don't understand. I've gone in there several times in the last couple years, neither of which were to have my kids. I had to go to Sitka to do that. Can't even have kids here. And I didn't see, ceiling tiles hanging from the ceiling and water shooting out of walls. And, I don't know what would constitute the building not being workable anymore. But I work in a really old wood boat, and it still works just fine. I understand it's not ideal in most situations, but unless you can give a compelling reason why we absolutely have to have this hospital that we cannot afford, then you're just going to have to make do.
Okay, and Bill?
I've had the opportunity to just briefly speak with the new CEO up there, and I'm encouraged at his approach in that he's talking to all departments and trying to get a good understanding of services that are provided and what might be provided in the future. I know that, disclosure, my wife is on the hospital board, and so I've been hearing a little bit about the discussion of new hospital renovation and, with the bonding authority of the borough at this point, that may not be in the cards at this point, but renovations may be. I'm looking forward to more discussion with the CEO and the board with what their recommendations are going to be when they get done with their surveys of services between the staff and with the public.
Okay, and Mark?
Well, I say go for it as long as it doesn't cost the borough any money. I remember back when they first built that thing. I think they put in a couple surgery rooms. We planned to have an anesthesia. I never could say that word. Gas passer. But there was no market here for that specialized kind of thing. And I've had a couple kids there, well, actually only one. It was just Dr. Woods and a nurse down the hall. Yeah, it worked fine. I've been in there. It seems like a very nice facility. The numbers I hear are staggering. I mean, I would consider a hospital a vital necessity, but is a library, new municipal building, remodel, powerhouse, fire hall more important? That's probably $30 million in cash and bonds right there that the city put out. So if it was needed, why not before these? I would love to see a new facility, but can we afford it now? I'm not convinced we can.
And Bob?
Since I was assembly representative in the hospital board, the technology and what we have at that hospital has significantly changed, and that requires more electricity and so forth. And so the boiler up there for the long-term care, for instance, there was no backup. The people that made it went out of business. There's a lot of changes that need to be made in the existing facility. That said, the borough does not have the bonding capability to do that, nor would I, if I was on the assembly, would I vote to do it. So there needs to be some interim step. The one thing I've not heard is, or have seen, is a survey of what really we need to provide for services in this community, let's say 20 years down the road. I've not seen that. So to say we need a new facility, what needs to be in that facility and what kind of services do we need to provide? And I think that needs to be looked at first. Then I go back, then the second question is how do we get there? To me, that requires both the hospital board, the CEO of the hospital, and the assembly to work together to come to some kind of a solution of where we want to go from there.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Next question will start with Bob, and it comes again from Kate Kowalski.
What is your position on the planning and zoning revision that is taking place right now?
And this is on the development code from planning and zoning?
Yeah, the
Okay.
revamping of the...
I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't hear the question.
There's a widespread revision of the development code for the borough going under review before the Borough Assembly this fall. What's your position on that and why?
Right now, I don't have a position. That came out last week. I saw it, and it's a significantly change, and so I have not had a chance to look at it, to even make to be able to say yes, no, or what it is. So I pass on that.
Okay, it is dense. There are some summaries up there that the borough has put up too. So
Yeah, I haven't read those. I haven't had a chance.
Let's see, Mark, have you had a chance to look at that development code?
No, but I've heard a few rumors over the years. Most of them I didn't like. Hungerford Hill, I mean, I'd give up on that. It's such a mess out there. It's just, you guys have it. I live out there, and it's right next to me is a industrial. I'm in a multi-family area. My neighbor has a single-family home, and it goes industrial, single family, and we got B and G. I guess they're industrial. It's trying to fix that now. I don't know. I just leave it alone. And as far as some of the others, the waterfront has changed. We used to have warehouses because we had boats that needed to go right to there. That doesn't happen anymore. We don't need to maybe have the industrial right there, because what I think Manish built there, it's a beautiful thing. And he lives there, has a warehouse. And again, that's kind of a mess. I don't know how you're going to fix some of that, but again, I haven't read the thing either. So.
Okay. I don't imagine many people have, but at least summaries or...
I promise I'll do my homework.
Taylor, the question to you.
Well, I'm glad nobody else seems to know too much about this because I know nothing about it. I heard, I'm friends with Richard on the planning and zoning, and he had mentioned it, that they were trying to make some changes or tweak some things, but other than that, I know nothing about it.
Okay. And Nancy?
Neither have I read it, although I've looked at how long it is. So this plan was put together with input from the community, with people being able to come up here and make suggestions. So, and as far as Hungerford Hill goes, had there been zoning when they started to develop it, that problem might not exist. But I'm gonna need to read it before I can come up with a reasonable response.
Okay, and Bill?
I'm with everybody else. I haven't, about the only thing I've read is that the last time the codes were revised was like in the 80s, which gives us some perspective on how long it's been since we've really needed to address those. So I'm looking forward to the discussion on these things.
Okay. And just maybe we could just go real quick lightning round down the follow-up question. If you're elected to the assembly, this is going to be one of the first things you're voting on, and it's going to be in October. So are you going to be, the five of you who say you haven't really looked into it, are you going to be prepared by the time this rolls around, your first vote, that you sit down here on the assembly? Let's start with Bill on that one.
Yes, and considering the announcement came out, was it last week, or I think I heard about it in the news, and I've been in town for like 2 days in the last 5 weeks. I think I can get up to speed on it.
Okay, Bob?
I would say the same, although I may have to ask for a 2-week extension to go through it. There was a lot of paper there.
Okay. And Mark?
Well, I imagine it's going to be an ordinance change too, so that's going to be 3 readings. So, and normally, standard, you go the first 2 and say yes, yes, and give everybody their chance, and then the last one you go yay or nay. So we got some time.
Okay, and Taylor?
I wouldn't know how to answer that one because I may be gone for the very first 3 meetings due to cucumber diving.
Okay. And Nancy?
And I hope to have it read and understood at least before the first of the 3 readings.
Great. Okay, I'm going to pass the mic over to Brian Varela, and let's start this question with, let's see, Taylor, you get this one first.
How many meetings a year do you feel it is acceptable for an assembly member to miss?
Oh, man. Well, I fish, and I'm going to be gone a lot, so are these unexcused or excused? Because I know we can phone in now, I believe, which I would definitely try to make those whenever I'm in self-service on the boat. I don't know, as few as possible.
Nancy, your question.
I believe that this unexcused absences is covered in code, in the municipal code, but as few as possible. And phoning in, I've phoned in once several years ago on a landline belonging to the people I was visiting and tied up their phone for 2 or 3 hours. So I'd just as soon be here in person, but I'm not fishing, so. But I think that unexcused absences are covered by code, and I'm not sure there's a limit to excused.
3.
Okay. All right, let's go next to Bob.
I think a person who runs and is elected needs to be present in as many as possible. I've done it, by phone a few times, and it isn't quite as good as attending, and so I guess I'll leave it with as many as possible.
Mark?
It's kind of changed from the last time I was on the council. I don't think we could phone in then. If we could phone in, I don't remember. We could vote, and cell phones were iffy. And that's changed. So I think if you're out somewhere, you could get to the cell phone service, and that's a plus. I'm not fishing anymore. I told somebody the first time in 40 years I haven't been out away from town, out on the water or somewhere else. So for better or worse, I would have more time to be here. But I think, there are some meetings that are important, really important, and you want to vote to go your way, you'll show up. Thanks.
Okay. And Bill?
Well, I know the last time I was on the council, I had some issues with not being here because my job took me away quite a bit. And but I'm retired now. I live on the island. I'm right down the road. I expect there might be a couple times of the year with either vacation or checking on my folks that I might be away. But as Mark noted, that back in our time, it was very difficult, and the technology was way different for being able to call in, which is very rare. But now with Skype and other things, I don't anticipate missing a meeting, except for the first week of February. I'll be in Barbados.
Okay, thanks. I'll take the next question. I'm going to ask another tax question. This is on property tax, though. Every year, the Borough Assembly gets to set the property tax rate, as you know, and every year there's a discussion about the possibility of a differential tax rate inside Service Area 1. So right now it's a little bit over 10, 11 mils for people inside Service Area 1. Not all those people are getting the same services. Some get water and sewer and power, and some get less than that. Are you in favor of something different for the people in Service Area 1 who are not getting full services? And if you are in favor, where would you draw the line? Two-part question there. Let's start that with Mark.
Well, absolutely in favor of if you don't have the services, you should get a different rate. I mean, if you have water and not power, water and sewer, that's the 3 main ones. So if you have 1 out of 3, that's, a third off. You have 2 you don't have, maybe down a couple more. I mean, it seems like you could develop a formula. the three main are, water, power, and sewer. And you can probably come up with a formula based on those.
Okay, question to Bob?
There's a process in place, and I couldn't expand upon it totally. But the folks out east of town here in southeast don't have all the benefits that folks in town do. And in that process, if they were willing to sign, I don't remember exactly how it goes, but if they were willing to proceed to come forward that they don't have all the benefits, that there could be some tax advantages, tax reductions for them. Several of them approached me a few years ago that we could do that, but to my knowledge, that kind of fell by the wayside. But I would be in favor of looking at some differential rates based on a set of criteria that they have. But I think infrastructure has to be taken as part of that equation.
Okay, we'll go to Nancy next.
The town services, the services in town, library, swimming pool, are available to everyone, no matter what their mill rate is. I believe that part of the issue of cost is covered in appraisals, the value of their home. It's worth more if you're in a town that has, or in an area that has all the services, is my understanding. I'm not so sure that there should be a discount of a third if you're getting only two of the services, because there are other services, and the value of your property isn't as great. So there again, it's a question of studying it.
Okay. And let's go to Bill.
Although it seems like housing rates seem to go up with appraisals, I believe that is the services that are provided there is built into the appraisal for the house. Keep in mind that things like sewer, water, and electric are enterprise funds. So if you're not getting those services, you're not paying for them. You're still paying for basic things like garbage pickup and the likes. I do know that there's probably some people that are who don't have the services or are still helping to pay off the debt for like the Scow Bay and Frederick Point expansion and that kind of a stuff. But overall, I don't think that's a major expense for them. And like I said, I think it's probably taken care of in their appraisal of their house. So, or the assessment of their house, not their appraisal, sorry.
And Taylor?
I would think that if you are not getting a service of some kind, then why would you be paying for it?
Okay. Next question, we'll start with, let's see, whose turn is it? Nancy gets to start this one. It comes from Kate Kowalski.
Okay. Should the borough take an adversarial, a conciliatory, or a participatory approach to the relations with the unions?
It is, even though it might take quite some time, I'm a strong union person and believe in negotiating. And I think the current method is, even though it can be time-consuming, is the best way to go. Negotiation.
Okay, Bill?
I think the current discussions or the way things are managed, I think, is probably just going to proceed like that. I know that there are different times in negotiations when the city is maybe starting to receive additional revenues that the unions can negotiate more, but that's their representation to make known as far as what they think their new rate should be. I don't like
confrontational. I don't like it when it appears that somebody's taken advantage of. I do think that overall that when it comes down to the final negotiations, the final product is based on the realistic ideas of what we're going to have looking in the next couple of years about what our future might be for revenue. I mean, it's tough to crystal ball, but you have to do the best you can on both sides for give and take.
Mark?
Well, the nature of the beast is going to be adversarial. I mean, they want money from us. We don't want to give it to them. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. I mean, it doesn't have to get ugly, but you're going to have to take a stand on both sides. So, at the end of the day, just walk away friends and say, that was a good fight. You know, two boxers in the ring, and say, yeah. But have a brawl on the street and then buy each other a beer later.
And Taylor?
Well, my first question would be, would this be the union for the city? Or, sorry,
The two unions for the city, yep.
Okay. So then, yeah, it would be like what Mark said. You want to try and save your money on this end, but you don't want to be, screwing the workers out of, getting some more money if you can afford to pay it. But I'd like to see it saved instead.
Okay. And Bob?
I believe in good faith, reasonable negotiations, and I think it can be done. It doesn't have to be adversarial, although at times it appears that way. I think the current process is pretty doggone good, although it is very time-consuming, and I think that some of the people on the borough, that work for the borough and the adjustments and the look at wages throughout the region, I think is really a good process that's used.
Okay, thanks. This next question will start with Bill, and it will come from Brian Borough.
Do you support keeping the school contribution at $1.8 million, reducing or increasing it?
I haven't thought about the school funding. I do know they have a formula that we have a basic requirement for meeting. I know there were a couple of years when we kind of had to just pay the basic and move on. I think it might be a little bit more now, but I think the school has done a good job with the management of their funds. When we started receiving Secure Rural Schools funding, they actually started to develop a savings account so they could react to changes and fluctuations in their budget. So, I think the level that we provide them now is probably adequate for what they're doing.
Okay, let's go to Taylor next.
Well, the schools, at least when I was there, everything seemed to run smoothly. There were probably some too old books, but we seemed to get by just fine. I did learn a lot more science stuff outside of school than I did in school. That's not on the teachers, though. That's me not paying attention in class. But if they're doing good with what they have right now, then just keep it where it is.
Okay, Bob?
When I was on the assembly, we continued that savings account. And as far as I know, there's still some money in the savings account. Right now, the borough gives the school system, I think it's what my memory serves, is about 20% above what the state requirements are. And so at this point, I would say we would hold it at that point and use that savings account as sparingly as possible and bring money in from other sources to hold it there.
Okay. And Nancy?
I too think the school is functioning well. It'd be nice if we had more money. I think the important thing is making sure we have enough teachers that class size stays reasonable. The savings account from payments that we get, I think it's from the Fed, are good idea. When I was in school, I didn't pay any attention to budgeting. Probably didn't pay enough attention to class, but they made it through, so I think the funding could stay where it is right now.
And Mark?
Well, I saw the school budget numbers there the other day. It's $8.4 million. 83% of that goes to wages and retirement benefits for the workers. I remember a time there was $700,000, sometimes almost $1 million that went directly to the school from the Forest Service timber receipts. Well, that's gone now. And I was like the unions. I used to always, just because I was kind of mischievously argumentative, would argue and make them do this. And at the end of the day, friends that work there, are you going to give us, yes, we're going to give you the cap. There's a formula, there's a cap. You're going to get it. Don't worry about it. You always do. So I'm sure they'll give. And there were times, not very often, that the school said, no, we don't need the cap. We're good. And that was refreshing. So if we give up to the cap, I mean, that's going to happen. So.
Okay, thanks. I'll take the next question. We'll start this one with Bob. And we've talked a lot about Service Area 1 downtown Petersburg issues, but the borough is a bigger borough now, and it encompasses a bigger area and outlying residents. Do you believe there's anything that the borough government should be doing to help people who don't live in Service Area 1, the city of the old city limits of Petersburg? And what would you like to do, if anything?
That's a big question. There's not a whole, I live in Duncan Canal, my wife and I. There's not a heck of a lot of services that I want, nor could the borough provide. However, I think that when we look at Midcoff Island itself, I think that there does need to be some changes, and I think that needs to be looked at. I think that we need to look at the fire and safety, particularly as you go out the road. If we would allow the tankers and the engines to go out there to fight the fire at the hatchery, I don't think we'd have lost 2 buildings, maybe 1, but we wouldn't have lost 2. I really do think we need to relook at the policy. And I think we have some really good people that can make determinations of whether you have a reserve here or what you do. The Assembly doesn't need to make that decision, but I think we need to empower those who pay to make those decisions. I would say that's probably one of the most important things. Along with that, there may need to be some kind of a facility, a tanker based out the road someplace, whether it be around Papke's, I'm not sure. That would be yet to be determined. And I think there needs to be some changes in the types of equipment and the training for our firefighters, and move some of our facilities that we currently have at Scow Bay. I think that'd be kind of my number one change that would really needs to be looked at.
Mark?
Well, on the borough formation, just for the record, I was totally against it. Not so much for the numbers and this and that, but my feeling is when the government gets bigger, the people start to lose out, mostly with money. My other fear was that nice people like Bob here, who don't live close to town, was deciding basically Petersburg issues. It should be a lot of those people are out there because they don't want to be next to town, and we should respect that still. I mean, Papke's is the biggest spot. We could try and figure out what they all wanted to do there. And the individuals that are out in the outlying areas, well, what do they want? They want to just be left alone. There's a lot of people out there getting rural sales tax now, and they're not happy about it. So that's the reason they were out there. But Papke's, maybe you can run water in from Blind Slough. Electric's already there. Anyway, that's all I have, thanks.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, I think I'd mentioned once before that with the increase in construction out there, that there may come a time real soon where we're starting to pay a little bit more attention to what we need for our police and fire services out there. I know that being on search and rescue, I know that we've extended services even out to Duncan several times with lodges and their boats going afoul and people getting lost in fog and all that kind of stuff. So we already reach out that far in some services already, but with the concentration of buildings in that area out there, at some point there is going to have to be some realization that some services may have to move out. I remember the discussion about what happened at the hatchery, and pretty much Service Area 1 has a constriction as far as what they can do for maintaining the protection of the services here with the staff, and they could only move so far out there when they can respond. I mean, we have remote. The fire department also has remote pumps and use of the harbor boat to take care of and respond to things on Kupernoff and the likes. But at some point we should probably reassess what's needed. I remember when I first got to my house and some years ago, when I looked out, I got to see a boat floating by and realized that it was untied from a lodge, and I had to call dispatch here in Petersburg to report this thing with the numbers and such, and there was a little bit of confusion about whether the dispatch really should respond to that because it was outside the borough and should not report that to the state troopers. It's kind of like, hey, it's a boat, the boat numbers are here, and it's time to move those services a little bit further out there.
Taylor?
Well, in regards to, it seems like Papke is obviously, fire can't respond to Duncan Canal, and if I were to move out there, then I would expect to have none of these services. I know several people who moved out to Papke's because they just wanted to be away from the city and its influence, and now we're a borough, and now they're dealing with the borough, which they were out there to be away from in the first place. So I don't know, maybe you go out there and ask them what they want to do.
Okay, and Nancy?
I've long thought that if this area's people who moved out there to get away from city control, and if they decide they want services now, that perhaps they need to form a service area and decide to sell revenue, approve revenue bonds to cover the cost of expanded services.
Okay, thanks. The question next will start with Taylor. It comes from Kate Kowalski.
Okay, I'm down to my final question. If you had the authority, what would be the one thing you would do immediately if you were on the assembly?
Well,
call into the first meeting.
Yeah. Does it cost money, or is it just, since we're wishful thinking? I don't know. I haven't really thought about being a dictator much, but I have no idea.
Okay, let's go to Bill.
I'm not sure it's something I would do in the city, but I'd mentioned before the issues we're having with our transportation and the ferries in particular. I think that's a real deterrent to continued growth in this community, and it's really made us dysfunctional. I mean, I'm looking at the sports teams and the increased costs we've had with them having to fly more because the ferries don't run in a regular schedule. I mean, getting to Juneau takes almost 24 hours both ways anymore. How does that really serve our community in any way? So I think that would probably be one of my strongest things, is to work with the state to see if we couldn't improve that.
Okay, Nancy?
I haven't given any thought or much thought to immediate goals. I agree that transportation, working with the state, is probably a very, very important thing, but as long as 50% of the population of the state lives within 60 miles of Anchorage, we're going to have to go some to convince those guys who have 2 roads between the major cities and a railroad serving their transportation needs. They have no idea how much we depend on the ferry.
Okay, and Bob?
There's 7 people on that assembly, and one person doesn't stand a chance, but I agree that transportation has to be one of the things to concentrate on. I don't know how to fix it, but it certainly needs to be fixed from what it is. Do we privatize part of it? Maybe. But to continue like we are isn't buying us anything. It really needs to change.
And Mark?
One of the first things I'd like to do is take a look when an employee retires or leaves the city workforce. Really need to take a look at that. Do we really need that position filled again or not? Understand that if an employee is making $40,000 or $100,000 a year, you're looking at the wage. You've got to figure everything else that goes with an employee. Retirement, workman's comp, everything. So if you're making $40,000 a year, the city's splashing in close to $70,000. $100,000, probably $160,000. So we don't want to micromanage the city manager, but maybe have a brief discussion. Say, it's a cost cutting, and we need to cut. Do you need that position filled? We don't want to fire anybody, but if you're retiring or you decide to leave, let's take a look at that. Not immediate savings.
Okay, thanks. Next question, we will start with Mark, and it comes from Brian Borough.
I just went.
Yeah. You went last, so now you go first.
You're mean, Joe.
What do you think should be done with the Ocean Beauty facility and its bunker?
I would encourage somebody to buy it. We don't want to take it off the tax rolls. That's a huge piece of property. It's being taxed. I would not want to put it in any kind of city function. I mean, I've been under that thing for the last 40 years, putting in pilings, fixing it, and it's scary. There were pilings in there just wagging in the breeze, not even touching the ground. When the ferry hit it, it moved it in 2 feet. I was on the crew that helped repair it. And really thinking that if it would have hit it on the end, either end, the whole thing would have went like dominoes. So I would not want the city to do anything with it. I got a feeling to take all the canyon stuff out, and some fillet operation or somebody else is going to take it. I imagine Ocean Beauty will give a darn good price for it.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, I wouldn't see the borough taking that over, because if you were to have to destroy that, there's major costs involved with that. Taking down the building and removing those pilings and so forth. I would rather see what we could do to encourage, or hope Ocean Beauty would, some other business to take that over and to use that facility.
And let's go to Taylor.
I'm with Bob on that one. I think it should get taken by another cannery, somebody buy it out. I had somebody suggest that, maybe we should turn it into a museum. And it maybe a cool museum, but it sounds like it's old. And I've done walkthroughs with the fire department and whatnot, and I just see a lot of stuff that would need to be put in there to turn it into a museum. And I don't know. I don't really want to have that many tourists coming through town to take a look at the cool museum. We don't need 5,000 people walking around downtown.
Okay. And Bill?
Yeah, Ocean Beauty is a private enterprise that decided to move out. there's not much we can do with it, or not much we should do with it. It should be left to the owners to decide how to dispose of it or to replace it. I do think that there should be periodic inspections. As if the pilings are as bad as they are, we should be having some type of assurance that it's not going to fall in at any time and be an expense that the city's going to have to pick up to have to fix or impede our fishing fleet in any way. So they still have some basic responsibility for maintenance until they decide to do something with it.
Okay, and Nancy?
Frankly, I would like to see Ocean Beauty fire it up again and get back in business there. I don't know if they increased their size of their operation in Excursion Inlet, or if they just closed this place down and kept that handling the same volume. I don't see the city or the borough taking it over for any reason, and the museum has never even given it any serious thought.
No, it was just a private citizen said, hey, why not make it a museum?
It would probably make a great museum if we had millions of, if I ever win a $670,000 lottery, I'll endow the museum and we won't have to worry about it anymore.
Okay, well, let's keep on the topic of tourism since Taylor brought that up, and I'll start this with Nancy. There's a somewhat larger cruise ship looking at the potential for Petersburg to be a stop, 900 passengers versus what we normally see of 100 or 200 at tops. What's your position on, is there room for an expanded visitor industry in Petersburg?
I believe so. I believe that as far as revenues go, we need to start expanding. And it's my understanding that this 900 visitors wouldn't all be descending on the town at the same time, that maybe a portion of them would be lightered in. But I like the idea of using the drive-down dock to unload those lighter vessels, but I do think we should encourage it and make whatever concessions it takes to approve, support their arrival.
Taylor?
I understand tourism's probably I don't want it to be the future for this town. I see what it's like in Sitka and Juneau when I'm there in the summertime, and it's a madhouse, and I have no interest in that being here at all. The small ships we have right now, I like that. It's fine. You got a couple people walking around you don't recognize, but where do you draw that line? You're going to have this cruise ship come in, and then another one's going to come in, and get some more tourism money, and then you're wholly dependent on them. And every store downtown is owned by the cruise ship company selling the same diamonds that they have in every other place. I don't want that, so I'm against it.
Okay. And Bob?
I think it's a good idea. We talked earlier about economic development in this town, and we have a situation where our fishing industry has been talked about, is no longer as what it used to be. So we have to look at other opportunities. I'm not totally, want to go to tourism, but I think it's an opportunity that we'd have with one of that size for maybe some small startup businesses to help to do things here. So I guess I'm in favor to give it a try and see how it works. If it brings some revenues to the city and to our businesses, I think it's worth trying.
Okay, and Mark?
Many moons ago, we had a referendum vote on the size of the boats that would come in. And it was a lot smaller than some of the ones you see now. And it passed 2-1. And it wasn't a year after that referendum, Tamacove was down there putting in a dolphin for bigger ships. My blood pressure goes up about 30 points when I see a cruise ship at the drive down. It shouldn't happen. Not in the summer. Let them have their traditional spots. The city dock, come into below the ramp, north-south harbor. But keep them away from the drive down.
Okay, and Bill?
Excuse me. I would be in, I would be in favor of seeing the additional ship come in because it does provide other potential revenues to our current businesses. I like the fact that it doesn't sound like the size of the boat would mean that there'd be these predatory size shops that come in like they do in Sitka and Juneau and Ketchikan. I think they'd be able to maintain our current use of our own specific shops here. As far as the use of the drive-down dock, I understand that some of the money that was used is to basically accommodate some of them down there at the drive-down dock anyway, so it's a commercial use. And, currently Tourism is one of the largest employers in Southeast Alaska. And if we can accommodate it and it's an occasional use, I don't see any problem with that.
Okay, great. Well, this last 2 minutes for every candidate, you can use as much of it as you want. This is your last chance to make your pitch for why voters should cast their vote for you. This is your chance. You can talk about yourself. You can talk about any issue that's important to you. So take these 2 minutes and tell voters why the vote should come your way. Bill, are you able to start with this one?
I think I can.
Okay.
I think I'm ready to go now.
Okay, go ahead. You get it first.
Like I said, previous criticism of my time on the council was I wasn't around. I'm retired. I'm here. I'm interested. I've lived 27 years in this community. I've called this home. I raised my kids here. I have a daughter who's already invested in a home here and looks to move into the future. I think we need to work on opportunities for other people to move in with reasonable housing, and I think we can find ways to do that. This is a showcase community as far as I'm concerned in Southeast Alaska. The willingness of people to work together to get things done is admirable on so many different levels. I think I can contribute. I've participated as an assembly member in the past, or not assembly member, but a city council member in the past. And I'm committed to working with the other city council members for good decisions to move the city forward, or borough forward. Sorry, I get mixed up there.
Okay, we'll go to Mark next.
Well, I'm fun to be with and I'm a much better dancer. But I'd like to go back to the senior sales tax exemption. The numbers I put out, the loss of revenue is 3% of the overall general fund, or 2% of the overall budget. I think this proposition as a whole is an insult to our seniors that today would be born after 1953. These are the people who, by their hard work and time, that was not as cushy as it is today, built this great little town. In any event, I'm almost certain that our seniors today would not have considered doing this to their parents or grandparents. And I'm voting no for this reason mostly because I can't pin down exactly what the numbers really are. I guess whatever way you want to figure the figures. So another 5% cut in the budget is not only a good idea, but I see it necessary. Thanks.
Okay, and Taylor?
Well, I am a younger member of the community. I wanted to get a little involved in how things go, since I'm still working and living here and trying to make things work for me. I'm not retired and got my plan set out anymore. I'm just involved in stuff. I got kids in school and whatnot. I don't want somebody else telling me how the school needs to be going and whatnot. And if I wasn't running for this, I'd probably be trying to get on the school board. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, Nancy.
I would like to continue to oversee the continued smooth running of the borough.
Okay, and Bob?
Yeah, I run because I'd like to have an opportunity to work towards the change and the things I see coming in the future. I think I do well working towards some common goals, and I think I do a pretty good job of listening to everyone, although sometimes folks tell me I don't make the right decision, but that's the way it is, I guess. Plans for the future, I think that we need to look at where we're going and what we need to do, and I think I'd like to have an opportunity, as I say, to continue with that. And at the same time, I feel strongly that I want to represent all the members of this borough and to be able to integrate their interests in whatever type of borough government we have. That said, I'd like to keep the spending within our means. I feel very strong about that. And once that, I like to, many times I disagree, but once that assembly decision is made, I think people need to support it and not go off on their own and do different things. And so I see me having an opportunity to do just that, to support those decisions once they're made. That said, I'm willing to do my homework, and I think folks have seen it in the past, and ask questions before we make a decision. And I'm willing to listen and talk to anyone. And with that, I'll quit. Thank you.
And thank you to all the candidates for taking part. 2 of the 5 of you will be elected to the Borough Assembly. And reminder to voters out there, if you're listening, voting day is Tuesday, October 2nd. Please get out and vote. And absentee in-person voting is already underway during business hours at the Borough Clerk's office. And thank you to the Petersburg Chamber of Commerce for organizing this, and the Petersburg Pilot and Brian Varela for participating. Thank you to everyone for listening. Good night.
I'm recycling this. Taking it in.
What's that? Well, I take some medication. The scratches like riding a steel wheel skateboard and I hit it.
As everything goes.
Alrighty, thank you. On to the next.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Went quicker than that. Thanks.
Keep forgetting my water bottle.
The speakers in here don't work too well. So.
You did. Good job.
They know. You don't know how long I worked on it. Try to make it.
Phone got every answer.